You ready? You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. Good morning, ladies, gentlemen, theys, and gays. This is the Real Pineapple. This is your humble host, Hunter, here. Hope you're having a good one. Hope you're well whenever you check this out. I'm really excited. I have today who you're going to know her from Stoke, Inheritance, and her new film, Chaperone. Um, I've got Zoe Eisenberg here. Zoe, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. I appreciate it. Um, so I just want to jump in here right off the bat. I love this movie. I watched it once a couple days ago, and then I actually went ahead and watched it again this morning.
Yeah,
Um,
wow, it's you and my mom. That's like,
there you go, ringing endorsements. So talk to me about the process of writing this, because I think what surprised me the most is in the press release I got, how the film said, like the tagline was, "It's not a love story," and I was kind of like, okay, like that's an interesting tagline. But as I was watching the film, I was like, wow, this is really not a love story, and this is kind of
yeah,
bumming me out. What, what, but I mean that as a compliment because it really made me like
yeah,
think. Like, so, like, talk to me about like, talk to me about the process of like getting the story together and like how this came about for you.
yeah. So the idea for the story came about when I was just about to hit 30 and I was working out at the gym and a high school kid mistook me for a fellow high school kid and asked me out to a house party. And I was like, I'm old, I'm married. We laughed about it. It was like mutually awkward. But then afterwards, I couldn't stop kind of thinking about and obsessing about what kind of woman would not have corrected him, what kind of woman would have
Mm,
gone to that party, and what would her life have had to look like where, she thought that that was the best choice for her at the time. So, that's kind of where I entered the story from. I found our protagonist, Misha, through asking myself those questions.
Now, in terms of writing, was there ever a conversation internally of like maybe someone else could direct this? Because I always find it fascinating when people go like, I'm gonna wear both hats. I'm gonna write and direct. Because I think there is a hesitation of like potentially one, maybe one hat weighs you down. So what was that conversation like internally?
Yeah, no, there was never a question about whether I was going to direct it. I was very much
Nice.
writing with the intention to direct. That said, sometimes during development process, you get, when especially when you're a new director, you can get folks that might come in and say, we love this, but we want to bring in someone more experienced. That never happened to us because we're really truly indie. So we were never really out with the kind of people that were like, oh, we would give you $5 million, but we want someone bigger to direct this. That didn't happen for us, luckily.
Good, yeah, because I thought you directed the hell out of this, and I think one of the things that stands out to me is the lighting. There's a good use of like of neon throughout the
The color,
film,
yeah.
but
Mhm.
but it's always like I love the contrast of having like these nice bright neon colors and then something really dark happening in the
Yeah.
same. And I know you're doing that intentionally, but I was just like, oh, I love that. I love that you're doing that. Um,
Yeah, there's some color theory going on that because of the pandemic we were put on hold for 2 years, right, like everyone else. So I had a really long time to be thinking about our production design, to be prepping to shoot, and so I came up with this sort of color theory that follows the film, where we start with darker, more muted colors when Misha is alone, when she's feeling isolated, when she's at work, and then once Jake, our high school kid, enters her life, the colors start getting brighter as she starts to feel more accepted. And so the kind of peak of the color is in the kind of the climax of the film before everything goes bad. And that's when you're like getting these really, really bright neons. And then after, shit starts to go down, we move
oh
back
man.
to the color that existed at the beginning.
So, okay, so talk to me about that because you just said that you started shooting during the pandemic. So, how much did you get shot before like you had to stop and then come back?
We didn't start shooting during the pandemic. We had started casting early in 2020, not realizing what that year was going to be like,
Oh,
Yes. So we
okay.
actually brought Mitzi Akaha, who plays Misha, who's in every single scene of the film, almost every frame. So we brought her on in 2020, and then we didn't get to shoot it until 2023. So we had about two and a
Damn.
half years where she was attached, and her and I would go back and forth on the script, but also I was, doing all of the prep work, like thinking really hard about what this is going to look like, what is it going to feel like.
What was the biggest change that occurred from the script from the break you had to take because of lockdown to what you finally finished shooting?
Um, you know, I think I don't know if the script changed in a massive way. The characters changed and deepened. When I bring an actor on, I love to work with them with the character because I think I just have so much admiration for actors. What they do is so incredibly hard, and they end up making the character that I write so much better. So, for instance, with Mitzi, we ended up rewriting Misha to be half Japanese and half Jewish, like Mitzi is, to kind of mirror her family
Nice.
dynamic. Mitzi's also a former competitive gymnast. So we brought that into Misha's character because I found it really interesting to be like, what if this was someone who was really ambitious and competitive when they were young, but is not anymore and is now
Mhm.
entering a relationship with someone who still is those things?
So I will say, I thought, um, I'm gonna butcher her name, but yeah, Mitzi. Yeah, you're saying
Yeah. Mhm.
I thought, oh man, I thought she was incredible in this, and just as I was watching the movie, there's so many points. Like I think what I find so fascinating about her and how you wrote her is to your point, she is someone that we find out was competitive earlier in life, and then just shit just kind of wore her down, and she just kind of stopped. I kept going back and forth of her because and I don't want to give too much away, but there's you find out that she's been at this one position for 12 years and she's actively being told by her friend like you will make more money, I need more help, like please take this promotion, and she's like no, I'm good. I'm sitting here going like girl, just take the goddamn you're like but I love that because I was frustrated, but then you see this kid and then as I'm watching I'm like oh no, like how bad is this gonna get, and I truly mean this as a compliment. It takes a lot to make me feel uncomfortable. The last third of this movie, I was like, God damn,
Uh,
this is like this is like Shakespearean and how like how shit just gets way darker than I thought you would like it would get. When you were writing this, was there any how do we put this? What is the give and take versus like wanting your audience to stay invested in but like not falling too much like that torture aspect of your audience because you can lose audiences that way. Like,
yeah, I don't know. I try not to think about that part too much because I don't get so much in my head. I just try to think about the human experience, and if I feel like I'm nailing this character, then I just hope that people will identify, and it seems to be working. But I agree so much on there's just so much hanging on Mitzi's performance, and even on the page, like I would get some notes when we were just sending it out to folks of like there isn't enough tension in this film, there really is not enough tension, there's not enough driving it. And I was like, I
really?
promise. Well, but that's on the page. That's
Mm,
without the amazing performances of when you're just alone with her in her house and you're kind of feeling what she's feeling because of what a phenomenal actor she is. I knew that that was going to be there. I also knew that our score was going to add so much tension, which it does.
yes.
Taimane, who's an amazing ukulele virtuoso here in Hawaii, did our score. So I knew that there was going to be just these elements that were going to really make you feel, like you said, uncomfortable. But I love that you brought up the ambition angle with Misha, because that, as I said, I tried to think about, where would a woman have to be making this choice, and I really started to think about societal.
Yeah.
And she's such an interesting character to me because, in my opinion, when we start the film, she actually has her shit together. She has been maintaining the same job for 12 years. She's not ambitious, so she's not looking for growth or more responsibility. But at the same time, she's showing up for work. She's on time. She's
Yeah.
doing her, she's in an incredibly privileged situation where she lives in a home that she inherited. So she doesn't have the financial pressures of needing to make more money. And I don't think there's anything wrong with either of those things, but
No.
the culture, our culture, American culture is so ambitious. I myself am a very ambitious person. Most creatives are. But I kind of was thinking about, well, what if you weren't? And what if that is actually what's alienating the people around you is your self-satisfaction with simplicity? And then she feels so alienated and so isolated that when someone comes in and makes her feel good about herself, she hasn't had that in so long that she can't really bring herself to break that kind of you know mirage that she is to Jake. Does that make sense?
No, that absolutely does. And I think that's what was so like that was the give and pull from
Yeah.
me because she's making these decisions where I'm just like, you fucking moron, stop doing
Yeah.
this. But as I'm sitting there at the beginning part, and I want to give you credit again here as a writer, I fucking hated her brother so much. The whole fucking time. I was like, he's such an asshole. And I was like, obviously what she does is like the thing she goes through, not great. But I'm like, he gets such a pass on everything that
Yeah.
as a dude, I'm sitting here, I'm like, if you're actually giving them the same amount of shit, which you should be, then
Yeah.
maybe he doesn't spiral like this. And like to your point, I found that so fascinating in the sense that she just needed a hug. She needs someone to tell her that like what she's doing is like she's
Enough.
okay.
It's enough.
Yeah.
She's Yeah. And so I think there's a real tragedy in that she feels so alienated and so isolated by people telling her she's doing the wrong thing that she ends up doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, I love the way you wrote her because you really do like you sympathize, but then there's that point where you just go, oh, like
Yeah.
you're like you know. Um
Yeah. We all have those friends, right? Who are like, I did this thing, and you're like, I love you, but you're an idiot, right? And so
exactly.
I want us to feel that way about her. I feel that way about her.
I wanted to throw it back real quick because you mentioned their name. Who is it who did the score?
Taimane, she's a really fantastically talented ukulele player out here.
Okay, yeah, they're fantastic because that the
Yeah.
score the whole time I was like, this is vibing
Yeah.
so much with like everything that's going on screen.
Yeah. She's
I want to
wonderful.
talk about about Vic.
Yeah.
Um, is it Noah? Is that how you say it?
No, Noah Goo plays Vic. Yep.
Oh my God, he's incredible. Like
Okay.
he's so good in this, and the chemistry between him and Mitzi is so perfect. What was the what was that casting process like as far as nailing this down? Because I mean, obviously, given the subject matter and given the story, like you have to have people who are able to like read between the lines and even like have those unspoken things just with like their facial expressions and all that.
Yeah.
There's a scene again I won't spoil in the kitchen that the conversation that these two have
Oh,
that
that's Laird.
that
You're talking about Vic, or are we talking about Jake? I mean, they're both phenomenal. So
uh,
Kanoa Goo plays Mitzi's brother, and Laird Akeo plays her boyfriend.
let's start with the brother first. Let's start with the brother first.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, because he's such a monster. I like he's so terrible. But then there's that point where you're like, he's dumb, but he's right in what he's
Yeah.
criticizing.
Yeah.
So, but you're also not a fan of him, so it's kind of like the messenger is wrong. Um, like I love the way you wrote their dynamic. Was that sibling dynamic like but yeah, how did you kind of go about writing that? Was because that's probably the most complicated relationship maybe in the film outside of the romantic one, obviously.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I have a brother, so it's
Oh, okay,
easy
that
for me.
makes sense.
Although the relationship between them is very different than with my brother, but I am able to pull from those things. But what was interesting to me is like they're half siblings, right? And they were raised sort of as friends growing up, and they still carry that kind of that friendship banter. But like you said, he gets a pass on everything that he does, where Misha does not, at least from their parents' perspective. So I was able to play with that and make him kind of a foil for Misha.
Yeah, like because again, to your point, like he is a foil, but there is this point where you're like, yeah, he's actually right in
Oh, totally. Yeah.
in
Yeah.
what he's saying. Yeah, Jake, um, that's the boyfriend. Pardon me, I
Boyfriend, yeah,
mixed up.
Claire.
Yeah,
Mhm.
pardon me, I mixed up. But yeah, they have this one conversation, and I think this is the best directed scene to throw it back to you. They have this conversation in the kitchen, and I was just sitting there the whole time like this, like, oh man, this is just like because you're waiting for certain shoes to drop, and once they start dropping, it is just the most wonderful slash unpleasant thing, and I think you handle every conversation that she has to have with incredible tension, and I think you just absolutely nail it. Is there a certain scene in particular that you have a fondness for as far as directing, like once you stop filming that scene you're like yes, like is there any of those scenes that jump out to you?
Well, yes, but it's actually kind of funny, silly, because working with the cat, right? We had our cat star. That's one of the
Yeah.
stars of the film. She's the first person on screen, even before we meet Misha, is the cat, and she's played by a phenomenal Kitty, who was 21 years old when we shot. She was deaf, and yeah, and she was, a lot more calm on set because she wasn't startled by things that a cat might just naturally be scared of. But there's one scene where Jake and Misha are in bed and the cat is also in bed with them, and it's a three shot where they all are kind of lying on their sides with just like half their faces showing,
Yeah.
and that was just happenstance that the cat laid down that way. And
That's so cool.
when you're shooting an animal, that it's not a professionally trained animal where you can just be like, okay, lay down and do. So everyone's just holding their breath, and the cat just lays down in this like perfect profile shot with the three of them stacked in bed. And when that
Oh,
wrapped,
that's awesome.
screaming joy. So it's like a very small moment, but it just so beautiful. And for me, the symbolism with what's going on right there is huge. So yeah.
I love that shot too. I know the shot you're talking about. Last question for you.
Yeah.
I I'm excited for people to get to the ending of this because when it ended, I was like, oh, like, and again, no spoilers, people, but it's one of those things where you're like, what in the best way.
Yeah.
Um, is there a certain message? Is there something that you want the audience to take away once the credits start rolling? Because I'll be honest, I had to like sit with this for a bit once the credits started rolling because I was like, wow, that was heavy. But is there anything that you want your audience to take away? Any questions you kind of want your audience to go ahead and have, like as far as discussions or anything?
Again, I think a lot about feeling and mood and character, but if I let myself fixate on what the audience is going to feel afterwards, then I feel like I'll get too far in my head. But I do, when I'm thinking thematically about this film, especially, we live on this island, right? Where the film shot, which means so much to me. It's my home. And I view Misha as an unlikely predator. I call her. She's kind of an invasive species. She's brought into this world of high school student that she does not belong, and she has no natural predators, and she ends up doing what invasive species do, which is thriving while negatively impacting everyone around them. So I really wanted people to understand at the end of the film that Misha's probably going to be okay. I don't think she changes. Change is hard. This film is a tragedy, but Misha's going to be okay. But not everyone else is going to be okay.
Okay, I love that.
That makes
Good.
sense.
No, it does, and I'm dancing around stuff because I really want people
I know. We can't
to
like
discuss.
actually talk
Yeah,
about like, what we think would happen after, everyone's like, okay, but that's where it ends. But what happens in the moment right after, and I do have opinions on that, but we can't share because it'll spoil it.
yeah. People, if you only knew. But seriously, Zoe, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today. This was so flippin' delightful. If you could please tell people where they can find you on socials, watch the film, before I let you go.
Yeah. The film is on social at Chaperone Film Hawaii, so you can follow us there. We're doing more festivals this year. We're playing Portland next. We're playing Philadelphia. We're playing a bunch of places. So check us out. And yeah, I'm on socials too. You can find me through the film.
Perfect, Zoe. I really hope this does well. Like I said, this was I don't want to say a joy to watch, but it was but
Yeah.
but it this really like I'm so excited for people to discover this film and have these conversations. I was talking to someone about how like something like A Teacher, which is one of those films that I think like
Yes.
but I think there's actually a better version of that film. So I thought this was amazing. So good luck to you and thanks again so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I loved being on here.
Thank you so much. So you take care.
You too.